always thinking of God and his rights. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, related an incident from 1907 in which Maulvi Muhammad Abdullah was given a scrap of paper to discard, but he kept it because it contained writing by the promised Messiah ﷺ and his wife. Although the paper was later lost, Amatul Rahman explained its background. She said that the promised Messiah ﷺ and his wife once tried writing with their eyes closed. The promised Messiah ﷺ wrote that one should always fear God and pray 5 times a day, showing the standard he set for his followers. His wife wrote affectionate lines about their children. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, explained that even in a relaxed home setting, the promised Messiah ﷺ's words naturally conveyed guidance, reflecting his deep concern for instilling love for God in others. The companionship of a prophet is like boarding a boat. The promised Messiah ﷺ planned a retreat of solitude and initially intended to go to Sujanpur, but was divinely directed to Hoshiarpur instead. While travelling there by cart and crossing a river by boat, he remarked that keeping the company of one truly devoted to God is like being on a boat, carrying both hope of reaching the other side and the risk of drowning. At the time, the companions did not reflect deeply on this statement. Later, when one of the 3 companions became apostate, Mir Abdullah Sinori understood the true meaning of the promised Messiah ﷺ's words. 40 days of solitude in Hoshiarpur. In Hoshiarpur, the promised Messiah ﷺ announced he would spend 40 days in complete solitude, followed by 20 days to meet people and answer questions. He instructed the 3 companions with him to only interact with him as necessary. He offered his prayers in the upper part of the house and arranged for Friday prayers to be held in a quiet mosque on the outskirts of town to maintain solitude. The 20th of February, an auspicious day. During the retreat in Hoshiarpur, Mir Abdullah Sinori once went to place food outside the promised Messiah ﷺ's door, when the promised Messiah ﷺ mentioned that God was bestowing immense bounties upon him and conversing with him at great length. He said that recording these experiences would fill many pages. During the same retreat, he received the prophecy of the promised son, which was later fulfilled in Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiyallahu anhu, the second caliph. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, noted that this prophecy was announced on 20th February, and it was by God's design that this incident was presented on the same date, marked as the day of the prophecy of the promised reformer, Muslim Maud. Those close to God are shown visions. On the return journey from Hoshiarpur, the promised Messiah ﷺ stopped near the grave of a renowned saint and prayed for him. During the prayer, he was shown the saint in a vision, and a local man later confirmed the saint's appearance exactly as seen. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, explained that such visions are granted to those close to God. He also mentioned that during the retreat, the promised Messiah ﷺ was shown a vision stating, "Blessed is he who is in it and who is around it," referring to himself and his companions. However, as one companion later became apostate, this serves as a lesson that one must always pray for a good end. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, added that during the retreat, God spoke to the promised Messiah ﷺ of matters that many people would not be able to comprehend. What did the prayers of the promised Messiah ﷺ look like? His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, described the manner of the promised Messiah ﷺ's prayer, noting that when standing he tied his hands at his navel, and during supplication his forehead rested on the ground with his fingers facing the Kaaba. After prayer he would adjust his turban, which would often become loose. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, also said that when the plague began, the promised Messiah ﷺ stayed with his family in an orchard, where companions on night duty observed him constantly engaged in prayer to the extent that they hardly ever saw him sleep. The importance of pre-dawn voluntary prayers, the Hajjud. During the pre-dawn voluntary prayer, the promised Messiah ﷺ would often repeat, "Guide us to the right path," setting an example for others to do the same. He described how the promised Messiah ﷺ would stand for such long periods in the Hajjud that companions could not match his endurance. When asked what to do if one is unable to offer the Hajjud, the promised Messiah ﷺ advised regularly seeking forgiveness, istighfar, and remembering Allah, as this would gradually lead one to observing it. His Holiness, may Allah be his helper, emphasized that this was not a replacement for the Hajjud, and especially in Ramadan, believers should strive to offer it, as Tarawih does not fully substitute for the pre-dawn voluntary prayer. Remaining in a state of purity. The promised Messiah ﷺ consistently remained in a state of ablution and would renew it whenever necessary. He was also constantly engaged in the remembrance of Allah, often reciting words of glorification and praise. In the early days, he was always the first to arrive at the mosque. On one occasion, someone tried to reach the mosque before him, yet still found the promised Messiah ﷺ already present. The spiritual glow of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. While the promised Messiah alayhi salam was on his way to legal proceedings, it began to rain, and he approached a local man's house for shelter. The homeowner initially refused entry, leading to a dispute with the promised Messiah alayhi salam's companion. When the promised Messiah alayhi salam arrived, the homeowner immediately humbled himself and allowed him in, explaining his earlier hesitation was only because of his young daughter. Despite being strangers, the promised Messiah alayhi salam's radiant presence, a result of his devotion to God, was instantly recognized by the man. A devotion to prayer like none other. Even during the stress of court cases, the promised Messiah alayhi salam never neglected his prayers and always ensured they were offered on time regardless of when he might be called to the courtroom. Detachment from the material world in pursuit of God. In his youth, the Prophet Messiah alayhi salam wrote to his father that periodic pandemics signaled the latter days, which led him to turn away from worldliness. Today, facing similar conditions, we too should focus on strengthening our connection with God. Prophet Messiah alayhi salam gave up worldly comforts and wealth for the sake of faith. Once, when a new Muslim farmer asked to leave for his harvest, the Prophet Messiah alayhi salam advised him to stay in Qadian a few more days to focus on his spiritual growth. This taught that one should balance worldly responsibilities with devotion to God, never neglecting Him. Prayers for Ramadan. His Holiness, may Allah be His helper, pray that Allah enable us to offer in sincere worship, increase our love for Him, and benefit fully from Ramadan, with its blessings continuing afterward. He urged prayers for Ahmadis facing false cases, for the Muslim world, and for global protection from destruction, asking that the innocent be safeguarded and the unjust be held accountable.